So today is the 12th of September, and although we are into autumn, you can see the colors changing. All the maples are turning orange and red, and it is really beginning to feel like autumn, but yet the temperature today is about 25, and I believe on Tuesday it's going to rise to 30 degrees. So what I'm going to do at this time of the year, being autumn, the summer is over, I will show you the successes and failures of our air layerings. I think I have recorded this a couple of weeks ago, and this was a air layering that only calloused, but I put it back again. So to recap, if I can just open this up, I will show you what I did rather than go back to that old video. This is a maple. I can't remember what the name of this variety is, but certain maples, although we talk of Japanese maples in a generic way, different maples behave in different ways. So this is another secret I'm going to give you. So don't think that just because you are airing a Japanese maple, they will all root at the same time. Some of them take as little as 6 weeks, some of them can take maybe 6 years. Now this one I opened up a few weeks ago because I wanted to show you what happens when they don't root. So this was the one which formed a mighty great big callus. Can you see that great big lump like a potato? So what I did was I scraped the bark again and I put hormone rooting powder. And all these nodules here are the rudimentary roots. So hopefully next year this one will root again. So that mighty callus has been formed over the last 5 or 6 years. So as I said earlier, not all maples root at the same rate. So this one I found from just experimenting, and this is the sort of research I do all the time. So this one didn't work, and the reason why it didn't work, I think, is because this variety is very shy to root. It's like some of the other species like hawthorn. The English hawthorn, the ordinary green one, they are very shy to root. So I've never had much success with it. So I did it in 2 places, and this one also formed a mighty great big callus but didn't root. So this was not exactly a failure, but it is half a success, not exactly completely successful. Now let me show you some successful ones. Let's go into the back greenhouse. I always like to show this tree because this is that mighty great big air layering I did. We severed it 11 months ago. In early September I cut it off and it had just a little bit of root, but look at it now. For the past year it's been growing big and it's producing seed. Look at the seeds. Even as an air layering, it's producing masses of seeds on this tree. It's only an air layering, so it's become big, and I know that the whole pot is full of roots, and in next spring I'm going to take it out and put it either in a much larger pot or even plant it in the ground. So this is the biggest air layering or the tallest air layering I've ever made. Now let's just look at something small. Now if we look at something small, let's take you to a small shishigashira. Now this is a shishigashira that belongs to Josh, who's photographing or doing a video for me today. And this is a tree that he decided to air layer because rather than make it a small bonsai, I said, why waste all this? Normally we would cut all this off to make just a small little bonsai about this size. But I said to him, rather than waste it, let's air layer these little small ones. So these little branches are no more than, I would say, thicker than a pencil. But we had a go at doing this. And Josh is just reminding me that we did this only like 6 or 8 weeks ago. This was quite late in the summer. And lo and behold, you can see the beautiful roots. Look at that. Look at these beautiful roots that have formed here. So that is ready to take off. So if I can just take the secateurs, I need to take this off here. So that is one. Let's look at all of them. Shishigashira, by the way, is very easy to root. I remember when I used to go to Japan, there used to be one grower who specialized in shishis, and he told me that shishis were one of the easiest maples to air layer. And he had a tree which was only about man high, about 5-6 feet tall. And on one tree he had about 60 to 80 little air layerings like this. And he used to make all these beautiful little shohin shishis just by doing that. Look at that, how cute is that? Look at that. So that's another successful one. And now let's look at this one. This also has some roots, so I can take this off quite easily. Of course, the more roots you have in the moss ball, the better the chances of survival. But because I know that the shishi is such a prolific and easy to propagate tree, I don't have any fears of it not succeeding. Now let's see whether this one, this one has all got. So this is what we call 100% success. He did 4 and all 4 of them struck roots. So how good is that? 100%. So it's 100%. There's again enough root there. And I'm going to show you how I put them up. So now this is going to be a nice little maybe shohin bonsai. So that is going to be the bonsai in future. So we've saved this. I'm now going to take you to a big deshojo. I showed the video has already been broadcast about pruning my deshojo garden tree. Let's go there and have a look, and I'll show you what's happening. This is the big deshojo that you've probably seen on the videos already about broadcast, how I pruned this tree. And this pruning was done on the 21st of June. If you can recall, we pruned this tree 21st of June. And I was saying at the time that I didn't have the heart to prune those heavy, thick branches. But as I say, there's a limit to how much you can air layer. But when I did it, after doing the tree, these 2 branches were really annoying me. If you go to the back, and if you go to that side as well, although these branches look useful, they don't really need to be on this tree. Now, the reason why I decided to air lay this tree is because over the years, the way I prune, these branches have got very nice twists and bends. So I thought that if I air lay here, I can still get a big tree and then air lay this. And this one, look at this one. This one would make a beautiful cascade tree. Now you won't believe, after I pruned this tree on the 21st of June, around the 1st of July, every time I passed this tree, it used to annoy me. So I remember on the 1st of July, I decided to air layer this tree, these 2 branches. So this air layering was done on the 1st of July. And about 2-3 weeks ago, I noticed roots coming. Look at it now. Fill the bag completely. So I would say this has rooted in just 6 weeks. Absolutely no more than 6 weeks. So this shows how easy deshojo's root, and it's coming out from the bottom of the bag as well. So I'm going to now take it off. I don't want to cut the plastic because it'll blunt my blade. So it is straightforward plastic bag, a bit of sphagnum moss, and look at all those beautiful roots. You can see If you come closer, look at the callousing here. These are all rudimentary roots, and the moss didn't even touch that, and roots trying to come out. So it just shows certain varieties. So Deshojo is one of them, which root very, very easily. So again, for the notebook, you will wish to note that not all trees or not all maples root easily. Some root more easily than others, and the ones that root easily include Deshojo. But I would, again, don't generalize. If you get a Deshojo that's propagated in Japan, it may be better. This is a classic Japanese tree. If they're grown in Europe, they may be different. So the provenance of the tree makes a very big difference. So this is now September, 12th of September. I've cut it off, and I'm going to propagate this. Now let's have a look at this one. I haven't seen this yet because the plastic bag doesn't let me inspect the roots. It's got a lot of black writing or black over it. So let's see what's happened to this one. Ah, look at it. Okay, beauty. Look at those roots. So again, 100% success. 100% success. The other very easy variety to air layer is Benichidori. I find that also I get 100% success, and the parent plants all came from Japan. So Benichidori and Deshojo are easy. So, and because of the slightly twisted trunk, it's going to make a beautiful bonsai when I get around to making bonsai from that. There you are. So this is the size of air layering we have. Look at it. Massive. And this one. So these two air layerings. Now let's have a look at the tree. If you have a look at the tree from now, it makes the trunk much clearer. And this tree should be okay. In fact, next year I might even air lay this branch because I don't think I need all of it. Or certainly air lay this one which is shooting up. So I know that in 6 weeks I can get roots so easily. So there you go. So while I'm walking by, we're passing all these maple beds, and these are great big Chinese juniper. This is the Chinese juniper kisu that I planted when I came to the nursery more than 35 years ago. And this is the source of all my air layering. So these are air layerings that I did only about a month ago. I did it in the middle of August. And although I did it in the middle of August, I don't expect it to root for maybe 1 year. Junipers, unlike maples, take much longer to air layer. So junipers usually take, as I say, usually a year to root. If they root sooner, they may not have enough root. So you live and learn, and you know what works and how different species respond. So the juniper is one that does root, but in my case, it takes time to root. So I'm not in a rush to even look at these. If we pass some of the hornbeams, hornbeam is another one that roots very, very easily. If you remember the video we did digging up the trees, we dug a lot of trees up, and we will just show you some of these hornbeams that we air layered at the time of digging the trees up. And I haven't cheated, I haven't looked at all, but these were done not by me but by one of our staff. And let me see what has happened meanwhile. And If it's done properly, usually hornbeam takes a very short period to root. Let us see if it has rooted or not. Ah, there's some root here. Can you see? There's a root popping out there. So it's starting to root. But I guess there's not enough root. You see how damp the moss has stayed. These were air laid back in, I think, April or May. I think. So it's more than 6 months, but not enough root. So I'll put it back. There's just one root, so that is not sufficient really to take off just yet. So I won't risk it. So although, as I said, hornbeam is normally an easy one, but as I say, some people are good at doing it, or some are not. I'm now going to another patch of maples, and these were done by some of our students on a course more than a year ago. Some were successful, some were not, and let's go and have a look at them. While we are passing, this is Ezo spruce. There's a history to these. These Ezo spruce were from that group that I had. I think you see a picture of it in my first book. And I made the cuttings in 1986. So this is a tree that is 35 years old from a cutting. And because they grow so rapidly, I tried to air layer it, but this was not successful. So I may have to do it again. So as you can see, you've got to just try experiments with different species and varieties and see what works and what doesn't work. So at this time of the year, when you go around checking, you will see the results of our experiments. And again, because I don't do them all, so I'm not sure if some of my colleagues or staff have done it in the optimum way, but I'm now going to take you to some air layerings that some of our students did on a workshop. These, by the way, while we're passing, are these great big square Martyrs, and I'm going to do a YouTube video on one of these one day. They've got massive trunks. It's not my favorite species, but they do make nice bonsai. When we do classes, we let some of our students do this. So the name of this person is here, and unfortunately this is not successful. And again, this is again someone else's tree, and I don't think this is successful either. So let me just see what's happening. Remember, don't be put off if you have a failure, because it's only when you have a failure that you learn what works and what doesn't work. Now this one, been here a long time, but no success. So this is completely dead, I'm afraid. So this wasn't successful. So although we show the students what to do, I don't actually do it for them. I like to let them do it, because that's the only way they can learn. So this wasn't successful. This, by the way, is Arakawa, rough. And I know that Arakawa roots very, very easily. There's one more there. I don't know whether this belongs to a student or not, but there was another Arakawa that I separated, and that was done by my Irish friend Alan, and that was successful. But this one, again, let's open it up and see whether it rooted or not. See, look at that. See, I can see that they didn't remove the bark completely. They only removed a little bit of bark. So perhaps I will have to do it again. And they didn't use a moss ball which was big enough. So I think there's inadequate moss and they didn't cut it enough. So we will do it again next year. And then hopefully when we do it again, it should be successful. So all is not lost with that one. Let's go to another one. No, I think not enough moss and they didn't cut it enough, so there are no roots there. No, slugs are in here. So this will succeed. Again, another student's one. Look at this one. See, it's calloused a lot. Completely calloused, but they put a bridge here, so the bridge joined it up. So they should have cut it completely. So although there are rudimentary roots here, it didn't form completely. So this is worth saving and doing again. This is another customer's tree. Customer's air layering. So let's see if this was successful or not. Everyone does it their own special way. There are one or two roots. Okay, I think I will take a risk and cut it off and pot it up, because I know that because it has some roots, there's still a chance of it taking. Okay, so we will pot this up. It's a rather ugly tree, so I can aerate that bit next year. And the bonsai will end up with this. See, that's an ugly branch, so that will go. But the base is nice, so these trees are all scheduled for air layering. This, by the way, is how we produce it. And these are air layerings we did in the past. You can tell the air layerings because they haven't got thick root. So many of these trees are all produced from air layering all the time, constantly air layering. It's a large Japanese larch, and because I didn't have the heart to just cut the top off, some of my staff suggested that I air layer it so that we have a nice tree from here. So this was done again in around May time, and I haven't looked at it. So I don't know what degree of success we will have. So let's see. Moment of truth. Let's see what has happened. And because I don't do it, I don't have control as to what happens. Oh, my goodness. Take my words back. Look at it. There are some roots. Look at the roots coming from here.
That's a bit of ivy. That's ivy.
Oh.
Yeah, that's root.
That's root. So there are roots.
Yeah.
There are roots. These are roots. There are roots. So, because this is a thick trunk, I may have to use possibly a chainsaw to do it. You think chainsaw or just silky can do this trunk?
I can cover that with silky.
Huh?
I can do that with silky, yeah.
So we will cut it with a silky saw and then pot it up. So I won't show you that one. Okay, let's cut it off. So I've discovered that it's got quite a lot of root, but because it's such a bulky air layering, look at the size of it. That is Josh over there, my volunteer. So that air layering is every bit 6 to 8 feet long. But we don't want all that, so in order to make it easier to manhandle or to handle, let's cut some of this superfluous stuff off. So I've got Josh to cut some of the branch off, leaving a stub so that we can gin that. Yeah, cut it there. We should have air layered that, but I got so many larches, so no worries. The larch wood is very soft, by the way, so So you can see the beautiful trunk line. That's why we chose this tree. And the other bit now, if we can cut from here and then cut from here, there and there, and reduce these a little bit. Okay. We would do this anyway when we come to potting it up a little higher up, about 40 years over there. Because if you have too much foliage, the roots will not be able to sustain all that foliage. Larches, by the way, are not easy to air layer. In all the years that I've been air layering, larches I find are one of the species that are difficult to air layer. This is just me. Other people may be more successful. So don't take it as gospel that just because I wasn't successful, other people aren't successful. Different people have different skills, so some of them may be more successful than what I do. I did offer the chainsaw for Josh to use, but he says that he can manage with the silky saw. So this trunk is every bit more than 6 inches. I would say it's more like 7 or 8 inches in diameter. And look at it. In less than a minute, he's cut through 3/4. So just using silky saw. Of course, this is quite soft wood.
What's up here?
Yep. There you are. Hooray, look at that. Look at that. Let's count the rings. Let's count the rings. So although it is as big as that, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And then we have all these very tight rings. 14, oh, I think there must be 5 there. 50, 20, and then another 5 or 6. So 25 or 30 years. That would be right. This tree was planted in 1986, so it must have been about 35 years ago that I planted it. So 35-year-old tree, and we've air layered it in 6 months. Turn it the other way around, look at that, a beautiful shape. Look at that classic shape. So that's going to be the bonsai of the future. So here we are, these are the spoils or the harvest of all the air layerings, that great big larch that we just separated. We're going to pot that up. And these were the 2 Deishojos, about 6 to 8 feet tall. They're going to be potted up. And these are the 4 small Shishigashiras. So just in an hour's work, we've harvested all that. I will also show you something else I did. If I will just show you what I did last week. Now this is the Crepe Myrtle. I have a big Crepe Myrtle tree, and I'll just show you the one that I air layered or separated earlier in the year. I will find it, but I want to show you that because Crepe Myrtle is quite a difficult tree, at least in the UK, to air layer because it's a tropical tree. But I did separate it, but when I separated the tree, it didn't have much root. I'm just trying to find it in this minefield that I have. Oh, no, that is Japanese bush clover. Let's have a look. But what I wanted to show you was that this one I potted up, but when I potted it, I will just take it apart, something I don't normally do. But it didn't have a lot of root. But because, you see, look at it. This is literally in a week. Look at the roots that are formed. So it didn't have a lot of root when I separated it, but it certainly produced a lot of roots since. it's done that. But if I can just take you to the parent plant, because sometimes they don't produce a lot of root, but they do take quite easily when you separate it. So let's show you the parent plant. You can either sit on that side or I'll stand the plant. This is a large, beautiful Crepe Myrtle, but because we don't live in very warm climate, it is rather shy to flower. And because the branches have become so long, I want to keep reducing it back. In fact, I should be doing it anyway, but perhaps I'm too greedy. I'm always waiting to make air layerings from it. So I separated quite a few air layerings. I separated one from here, one from there, and two from the top. But this one I haven't taken off yet. I want to see how much root it has. And if I remove the bag, well, hardly any root. You can see what's happened. It has calloused over and no root at all. So even though I did this, it wasn't successful. That's why I didn't remove this one. But the other ones that I removed only had like one root. And from that one root, it has formed a lot of roots. So, as I say, different species behave in different ways. So I will air lay more. So although these stems are pretty thin, they're like a pencil thick, like the Shishigashira, they're still worth air layering. So you don't have to air layer just thick branches. You can air layer thin ones as well. Now let's show you how we pot up those air layerings. It's worth repeating it because the transition from the air layering to the pot is very critical. So I'll show you how we pot these on, because many people succeed in rooting it, but when it comes to putting it in a pot, they fail because they either disturb the moss ball and break the roots in the process. So that's very tricky. See, even what I'm doing there shouldn't have been done. You see, I'm cutting off this long excess wood because I don't need it. But here I wouldn't risk it, because if I cut there, I may break the roots, so I would leave it. Now the next thing is to reduce some of the foliage, because I've always said if you have too much foliage, the roots won't be able to sustain the tree. So reduce as much foliage as you can get away with. And the pot, even that may be a bit big. Choosing the pot is quite critical. So let's go through the entire process, because whatever I show you, you will learn something from it. So I'm choosing some earthenware pots because they are very heavy. You don't want anything which is very light and floppy, because the tree will topple over. So if that is the size of the root ball, I think this size of pot is sufficient. So, because once the roots fill that pot, I will then move it on into a slightly larger pot, and at that stage I may not need to use so much sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss is quite an expensive commodity. As I've told you many times before, we bring our sphagnum moss all the way from New Zealand, and rumor has it that they may stop allowing us to bring it. So I don't know what I would do. I'll try and get it from local sources if you can get it. I believe in Ireland they may produce it as well. So that's how I put that up. And then this one, even that pot is adequate. So I prefer to use earthenware pots because plastic pots are very floppy and they may not be able to stand the weight of the tree, and the tree would topple over. So because these are small air layerings, I'm going to use small pots just to fit the root ball. And once it fills this pot, I will show you progressively what we do. Then we can put it into larger flower pots, but not use sphagnum moss entirely. So ideal size pot. I bet if I took a video in a week's time, it may fill the pot, because we are having some nice warm weather in mid-September. So these are the trees. I'm going to show you what I will do with it in a moment. We'll stand it in trays of water. Now, this was another one. I don't need all that. I don't need all that. So I think that is just the right amount of foliage to keep, and there are sufficient roots there. Those roots are sufficient to support the tree. Now let's find a suitable pot. I always like using a deepish pot like that. That would be ideal. So sphagnum moss again. You can use a very soft compost, like a peat-based compost or even bark, but I don't like risking it, because I know from experience that the sphagnum moss is a surefire thing. So why risk something unknown when I know that this works? So that is how I potted this one up. Now when it comes to these big fellows, I think I'll probably take it to the situation where I'm going to pot it up and do it over there. So this is the great big beast that we severed from the main trunk of that larch, and now I'm going to put it in a biggish pot. And we have checked that there are quite a few good roots there. So let's remove the bag again. Let's put these little fellows aside. These, by the way, we always stand in water or stand on moss so that they don't ever run dry. So let us see what is in there. This, I think, was done by Padma Priya. So he was very successful. Look at those beautiful roots. Okay, I've got to be careful not to break it, because the chances of breaking is quite high. So because there's a big pot, to fill it with sphagnum moss is going to cost me a fortune. So I will try and be a bit frugal, and I'm going to fill some, this is just finely chopped pine bark. Fill the base with pine bark, and then around the root ball I will put the moss. I don't know how deep this pot is. I don't know whether it will go in. This is really critical, because it's such a big tree with such a big trunk, and if you mess up the roots, all your efforts would be wasted. I must admit, this is the largest larch I've ever air-laid. I don't often do larch because they're so easy to grow from seed that I don't see the need for growing from air laying, but because you get a better root system with air layering, I choose to do this one this way. Okay, so a lot of moss used there, a whole bag of moss, and you notice it's standing in a tray of water so that it's always sucking water from the base. So this is critical, and I make sure that it's not wobbling about. So I will just, to be absolutely safe, autumn all these needles will drop because the larch is a deciduous conifer, and next year hopefully you will see new shoots coming, and I will follow up this again. So from that great big area that was very wide, we took a lot off. We're taking more foliage off. I think that is enough. We will keep an eye on it. And because we have a protected environment here in this greenhouse, once I notice that some roots are forming, I may put a little bit of very mild fertilizer just to stimulate the roots, but I won't put the fertilizer yet. I will just put a little bit of fertilizer to encourage more roots to form. So that's how I potted that one up. So we can do the two deshojos now. So I'm going to pot this deshojo up. This is the one I took off the tree from my own garden. Beautiful trunk, look at it, about 2-3 inches thick. And because it's a tall tree, if I put it in a shallow pot, that won't work. You either need to put it in a deep pot, plastic pot like that, or better still, this is a ceramic pot. And because it's ceramic, it's so heavy, there's no danger of it toppling. So I'm going to put it in this. So let's put it against the wall there, because I'm going to tie the tree up. This is surefire. They're so successful that I have no doubt or no worries about the roots getting damaged. So as I said, certain species are very easy to root. Look at all those beautiful roots. And let's have a look at the close callus. Look at the callousing there. More roots will come from there. So we put it in here, and the whole object of tying it to a structure is to prevent the tree rocking about, because if it rocks about, every little movement will shake the plant and will break the roots. So keeping it steady and stable is part of the tree. So this is the other air layering, and again same thing, a lot of callousing, and if you remove it, I think the roots are a bit wobbly in there. So this is going to be a cascade tree eventually. So let's insert it here carefully without breaking the roots if I can. Oh, and again I will use sphagnum. So tie the tree again. I'm going to reduce the foliage in a minute, but main thing is to get it potted up. And I will just put some sphagnum moss immediately around the root, like so. And that will spread. But because sphagnum moss is such an expensive commodity, I'm not going to put too much sphagnum moss right through the pot. In fact, the other one I'm going to do another experiment. I always like doing experiments, because it's only by doing experiments and research that you begin to realize what works and what doesn't work. So that's covered that. And then this one, I'm not using sphagnum moss at all. This one, I'm going to just put it straight with the bark. So no sphagnum moss with this. But why am I risking this, you may ask? I'm not risking it because I know that the deshoja is a strong variety, and I know that it will send the roots whatever. So I'm saving a bit of sphagnum moss. The sphagnum moss is still around the root ball, and that's all I'm going to do. And I'm going to fill it with water so that it doesn't dry out. That's very important, so that it doesn't dry out. Water is very, very important. If it dries out, then the alien will die. And that's it. I will just reduce some of the foliage, but since it's autumn, the foliage is going to drop anyway, so I'm not that bothered. If I was separating the air layering in June or July, I might have to be careful how much foliage I leave in there. So we'll look at it again in a week or so, and that is a good morning's work, separating and harvesting the air layerings that we have made in the course of this year. So I hope you've learned more tips from